Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. I'm here with our repeat guest, Ariel Ziegler, pronounced Ziegler with an I, like Zig Ziglar, but no relation, unfortunately, or else we'd probably have another conversation. What's funny is this is our second episode. The first one we talked more about your nutrition and your movement and kind of your foundational functional health training, which was a lot of fun, and I highly recommend. First of all, that was one of our first probably 10 podcasts, and you got really vulnerable, talked about the health challenges that you had and the eating and the bulimia and the anorexia and then the weightlifting and the bodybuilding and kind of like this whole spectrum of like body, what I guess we would call dysmorphia issues. And First of all, thank you for being very vulnerable. We got to go back and set up some clips from that actually, because we've evolved in how we're marketing the podcast. So we'll go back in time and we'll do a better job on that one as well. But what's most interesting to me is that as we've gotten to know each other the last couple of years, you have found that when you're working with people on their nutrition, their movement, their health, their weightlifting, all that stuff, what it really comes down to is behavior coaching and what you call disentanglement coaching. And I know you've been on this journey for a while with Heart and Soul Wellness, which is the company that you own, of like, the overeating, the fat, the not working out, that's a byproduct of something deeper. And if you really want to make change, you know, your whole life goal now has kind of shifted to like, all right, cool, we can still do the nutritional planning and the weightlifting and the bodybuilding and whatever functional movement, but we really got to get to the story under the story. So what did I miss in that 60-second explanation of your journey from like, I'm a fitness instructor to like, there's some deeper shit here we got to deal with?
You didn't really miss as far as the highlights, but I've found over the course, like you mentioned our previous episode, like the dysmorphia and all that, there's always deeper mechanisms, right? It's never about the thing. That's something I'm very big about. It's never about the surface level. There's something deeper underneath. And if you don't address it, then it's a Band-Aid for a bullet wound. You're just going to be stuck in the same situation again and again. It's like when you throw on the keto diet or you go on this 75 hard, no bashing either of them. But again, they're not dealing with the underlying mechanisms as to why the individual has fallen out of alignment with themselves in the first place. And my own journey was constantly Band-Aids over bullet wounds. I was like, oh, I get to XYZ goal, but there's no sense of fulfillment, happiness, or actual accomplishment with what's going on. And being a type A personality formerly, and I'm sure you can understand this as well, it's like, okay, check mark, what's next? Mm-hmm. Okay, check mark, what's next? And it wasn't until I actually sat with, there's a dissonance within myself, a sense of distrust, hate, lack of self-worth, whatever, that I was like, oh, there's something else going on.
Yeah. And how did you come to this awareness? Was it with coaching? Was it after the, 17th failed fitness program or successful fitness program, which is interesting because I think it can kind of metamorphosis. It can mutate. Yeah. We'll just use that word. Yeah. It can mutate either to like wild success. Cause I know people that are like emotionally unstable and they're addicted to doing Ironmans or they're addicted to whatever the next fitness crunch is. And then of course, and I know I'm being judgmental here and this will probably get us canceled off YouTube, but when I see somebody morbidly obese, I immediately know that they have some serious like emotional or mental damage. Like there's just no way you eat yourself into 400-pound obesity without something going on mentally. So how did you get there for yourself? And then of course, how do you bring that up with clients?
Well, I'm very vulnerable. I hate the word vulnerable because it's such a hot button these days. Like, oh, I'm going to be vulnerable. It's like, no, I'm just open about everything, because the more that we're open about everything, nothing can touch us because nothing is being hidden anymore. So there's no judgment that you can fear because it's already been put out for everyone to see. I had a mentor I met him about very soon after our podcast, actually, the first one. And it was me dealing with a whole bunch of shit, basically, that I'd been pushing under the rug for my entire fucking life. Which had created the eating disorder, but it went from eating disorder to type A personality, being number one in the fitness industry in my area, being number one in this, being number one in that, then having this amazing physique that everyone aspired for, being fucking 8% body fat, exercise addiction, all these different things. And it was like, I didn't want to sit with myself. I hated myself. There was a like for my mother, I still remember at her deathbed, I ran from it. I was like, I don't want to be here. And I made up some bullshit excuse. And I had a lot of self-hate for something like that. There was a conglomeration of events in which I just didn't forgive myself. I had no self-worth, shame, guilt, which manifests into a physical representation where you literally cannot look at yourself. And this is very common. I've seen, again, now with over the hundreds of people I've worked with in the last couple of years, these sort of emotions are tied to certain patterns of behavior and coping mechanisms pretty much unanimously. There's always going to be outliers in how they deal with certain things, but like guilt and shame many times will manifest as dysmorphia on the body.
And so when you say guilt and shame, and again, there, like you said, there's outliers to everything. We're painting a pretty broad brush here. If I see somebody morbidly obese, there's a damn good chance that there's some guilt or shame there around something, whether it's about their body or their finances or their relationship with their parents or all the Freudian stuff. There's some deep-seated shit that goes on that allows somebody to eat themselves into a, diabetic, unhealthy, trying to kill myself phase, right? I mean, like that just seems totally sensical to me. And yet the modern narrative is like, well, you're just fat shaming and you can be healthy at any size and fat people can be happy too. And I'm like, come on.
Reinforcing them staying in that cycle and then becoming the societal norm. And we wonder why we have skyrocketing levels of like psychosis and psychology issues. Record numbers in life, but we never deal with what's going on and we just want to accept it all. When we're accepting all, we're not actually pulling the truth to the forefront. And that is what this all is, repression of truth. We hide from truth ourselves, and then we say that it's okay for everyone else to hide from truth, thereby validating them staying in their coping mechanisms and addictions, which is the root of disease.
Yeah. And look, I'm not saying that you're mentally unstable or you're not a worthwhile member of society if you're morbidly obese, but there's a 0% chance that you are happier as the type of person who can't make it up a flight of stairs getting winded versus the type of person that can go up a flight of stairs without getting winded. That can't even be up for debate. And somehow it is up for debate now. Where even I can't remember if it was Glamour or Women's Fitness or one of them. They did this whole like healthy at any size, and they had these morbidly obese models. They can't be healthy. It's impossible. Like blood sugar levels matter. The math is just the math. Cholesterol matters. Like body fat mass matters. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. And coming from the former fitness industry, I feel the same way. That's what we preach. And this isn't saying overweight, like 30, 40 pounds. Okay, maybe, possibly, but that, and also that skin rigid. There's also the other extreme of the fitness industry, which is the exercise addiction, in which these people also hate themselves in a different way. And that's the only way they're able to validate. So it's like, we need to find this healthy medium of just like, fucking do what you want, do what you love. Don't keep doing it for things and people outside of yourself. But there's also that barometer, which is, and that's why many coaches are very wary of tapping into this internal drive, because for many of the elite level athletes, it's not passion that drives them. It's hate. It's self-disgust. It's lack of trust within oneself. So, it goes both at either extreme is never, ever healthy. When we're talking about the bare basics of physiology, if you are ever on one end or the other as far as extremity, your body will recalibrate that as the new homeostasis, the new set point, which means, guess what? Now you have to go one way or the other.
Yeah.
Bodies are great at adapting. So it's like you have to have a healthy medium. Otherwise, you're going to have some sort of maladaptations, not only physiologically, but also within your psyche as well.
Yeah, because you mentioned this as a woman, like I'm 48% body fat, not healthy, obviously, but to your point, 8% body fat, walking around at that your whole life. For it's different for men and women, obviously, because of body mass and bone and muscle density and stuff. But like a woman walking around at 8% body fat, that can't be healthy either, right? You get a cold and it can wipe your ass out.
Oh, it also shuts down your hormonal function. So your estrogen goes to the shitter. Start actually being a postmenopausal woman if it is an extended duration. Yes, like women literally will not be able to have children. Their hair starts to fall out, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease because your heart is now working harder because of the way that the lubrication and all that works. Our cardiovascular system is very, very closely tied to our reproductive system as women. So, I mean, yeah, and then no sex drive. And the funny thing is, guys are like, oh, that's so hot. And it's like, I had no drive whatsoever for 2 years. Unless you're bringing chocolate, get the fuck away from me. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a healthy medium. And unfortunately, we thrive in a society of hustle, grind, and extremity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's either you can be morbidly obese and happy at every size, or you better look like Thor and have, 16 pack abs. I remember watching something like a behind the scenes on one of the Marvel movies, and they're talking to Chris Hemsworth, and he was even saying in this interview, he's like,
miserable.
Man, he's like, it's all bullshit. Like you work out for 6 months. Then you starve yourself and bleed every ounce of food and water out of yourself for 4 days. And then you show up for this one shot where you're the most ripped you'll ever be for 30 seconds. And then you almost pass out. And then you realize that in post-production, they made you even more chiseled. He's like, it's totally unfair. He's like, no human being is ever going to look like Thor. It's just, he's a god for a reason.
But
now this is like now the new male standard, right? And I think we've actually gotten to a place in Hollywood, whether it's the Tom Cruise looking like he's 22 at 62, or whether it's the Thor superhero look. Like I got to think men are finally on par with getting body shamed as much as women. Like it's got to be getting pretty damn close, right?
Yeah, and then especially when you have the ultra feminist movement, not the original, pushing down men actually wanting to become masculine, right? It's like, no, you cannot be masculine. I need to be masculine. Then women are wondering why they don't have masculine partners. It is so fucked in so many ways. People aren't allowed to be themselves. And if they are themselves, they can get the fuck out. But somehow, if it's politically correct, then it is correct. Like, it's such a shit show.
Yeah, I got to tell you, behind the scenes, because I'm pretty open on social media about my beliefs and things like that.
I love it.
I'll get the call from, how can I say this? Your typical Los Angelino, mid-30s, never been married, very successful businesswoman. And publicly they're all in on the political correctness, like men should be feminized, I am woman, hear me roar, which I'm all about that. Like a lot of my best referral partners are badass, strong-willed, alpha female business owners. And I love that. And then they'll call and they'll be like, so, Scott, do you know any guys that aren't pussies? Because I'm kind of looking for a spouse. Like I want to get serious and maybe have kids. And I've been going out on a bunch of dates with men with man buns where like they didn't open my door. They didn't pay for the bill. There's a 0% chance they're going to be a protector. I don't know if this is who I want to have kids with. Like, do you know any, like, for lack of a better term, manly men? And I'm like, no, I don't. You've castrated them all or they're already married. So,
they're all in the cattle row. We might have to go back a little bit and check for the horns.
Definitely they're not living in LA anymore. And again, we're generalizing. We're going to get in trouble with everything that we're saying. But I mean, there is this.
Me. I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Well. Oh gosh. I'm gonna be really mad when we finally get this channel to monetization and we finally have like 400 videos up, and then we just get the channel wiped out. So Chris, please. I always tell you this. Make sure we have a backup on Rumble or somewhere of the final product.
But so let's jump onto that one, because that's actually something that I deal with a lot, believe it or not. I think I had 3 women recently right now who are very type A, very alpha females, very, very successful in their areas of industry. The problem is, and you've probably heard this before, especially with like manifestation, but this has actually been proven, like to an extent within quantum physics. We attract what we put out. So, or the yin and the yang, right? Men don't want a woman who is them. They don't want to be pushed. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be led around all the time. They do sometimes, obviously. Sometimes you're like, hey, honey, can you take care of dinner? Whatever, but I'm guessing you've been married for a while. what draws you to an extent to your wife is her femininity, is the fact that she's there to lean on. She is someone that you can go to. She is someone who is there no matter what. She doesn't, I mean, to an extent, women order around, let's be totally honest, but there is an ease and a femininity to her that is not domineering. It is not masculine. And the problem with these type A women who come from, most of the time, trauma-induced households in which they had to claw and fight their way to the top, former one myself, they are actually pushing those men out of their field because they are the man in their life.
Yeah.
So for these women to be able to find the man that they want, they have to deal with the fact and look within themselves as to why they feel the need to constantly be that man in their life. What trauma or experience happened in their life that makes them feel that they can't be open and vulnerable for the possibility of someone else coming into their life?
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a certain nurturing and like femininity to my wife, obviously, that's like, for example, right now on the stove, she's like fallen in love recently with like cooking some new dishes. So we've got this awesome like chicken pesto, something. She knows I'm trying to eat earlier in the day because I'm trying to stick to like intermittent fasting and just be a little bit healthier and get my energy levels up, which has been working, by the way. We'll talk about that in a bit. And, you know, she just came in my office and she's like, hey, there's some chicken on the stove. Like whenever you want to eat, you know, was happy to make it for you. Versus if she walked in and she was like, hey, you're going to be done with work by 5:01 so that you can eat at 5:15, right? Because you got to get in your 18 hours of fasting. I would be like, dude, I'm not trying to be married to my personal trainer. I'm not trying to be married to my accountability coach. Like, I love that nurturing. I love that that's a way, especially in the Hispanic community, that they show love, like by cooking for you. I've never walked in my mother-in-law's house and not eaten because that's just how she expresses, love through cooking and through food. So it's like, I love that. But to your point, if she was super domineering about it, like, hey, food's on tap at 5:15, you better be done with that lead generation call, I'd be like, what, are you a dude? Like what is going on here? Like a little flexibility. So yeah, I get your point on that. So how do you work with these women that you're talking about who, like, you know, they want to excel in business. They want to excel in fitness. They want to be the alpha female, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they also want to attract, I'm guessing, probably more of like an alpha man who can be, you know, take the bull by the horns or whatnot. So how are you working with these women to be like, oh, maybe if they want to be, there's a little bit of a shift in your personal relationship on like how this interaction goes down. Like you're not the CEO anymore, you know? Yeah. How do you have that conversation? Cause I know you're very into like women empowerment and I've seen you fuck up a bunch of dudes on the jiu-jitsu mat. So I know you're one of the toughest girls that I know. And still have like some of that femininity, right?
So that actually, I'm happy you asked because that's actually like a very core piece of what everything that's centered around the crux of what I mentor and coach. That goes to identities, right? We all have an identity in which we decide to ascribe to within society. It's right. Okay. I'm the father, I'm the business owner, I'm whatever. It's the identification of you are not your identity. You are the consciousness or the awareness that is observing the identity, and you can decide to step in and out of that identity as you choose. It's like a hat or a coat that you decide to don. You are not tied to it, and your worth and value has nothing to do with it.
Tell me more about that switch, because something that I'm realizing is I'm a little bit worse at managing. You know, there's that male archetype. There's like the king, the warrior, the magician, and the jester, I think, is like kind of the four male archetypes. I find that now that I'm working from home, I do a worse job of stepping into those different roles because it's like, it's back and forth to the kitchen from my office. It's, oh, work is done. And now I walk over, I'm a family man. Whereas when I had a commute, whether it was 10 minutes or an hour, it was like, okay, I've got this hour to decompress, listen to a podcast. I can switch from like worker, warrior, going crazy mode, own the day, do the lead generation to like, oh, now I'm like the good, fair, and just king, and I've got to make sure that our little courtyard is in good shape, and I got to be a good father. It's been a challenge for me, and sometimes I just go for a long walk because I'm like, I'm going to bring some of my garbage at home or at work into the home life. So when you're talking about taking off that hat or that jacket of like kind of your construct and then accepting that like, okay, now I'm stepping into a different construct, I got to think that that's gotten worse since COVID because everything is mushed together and commingled because of how many people are working from home. So maybe I'm way off. Maybe I'm the only one that has that problem, but I feel like it might be a problem for a lot of people.
Well, this goes to what do you truly want to desire? Also, this is the disentanglement portion. It's what is it really? What are you doing about your life that you truly want to do? And how much of it is merely a result of the identity or persona that you've associated with for so long? And this is a dangerous realm in which we go to, right? Because this is the risk of us actually losing doing so many things in our lives, because guess what? As soon as we dissolve the identity or persona, we realize it's not actually who we are. Those things we thought we wanted, we didn't ever really fucking want. They were merely a byproduct of having to associate within that construct that we were aligning with society. So, I mean, if you really want to continue to keep those identities and personas within your life and you feel that they're advantageous at this moment, then you can decide to utilize certain cues or blocks or alarms or some sort of external modicum to bring awarenesses to, I need to go and do this, I need to go and do that. But this is where I would ask you, are you truly desiring what you're doing, or is it merely a means to an end for some sort of extrapolation or goal that you think you want?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people, have to do a job that they have to do, right? And like maybe you can find ways to bring your passion into your job and what have you, but the idea that like, oh, just do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's like, I don't really believe that. Like people at some level, like there has to be people shoveling shit and there has to be people filling out the spreadsheets, which is not super fulfilling and passionate about that. Right. But I do also want to be able to detach from like, all right, cool. Whether I want to be a top producer or a middle of the line producer or just like get by at work, I want to be able to detach from that and be like, all right, cool. There's a certain persona and a certain like drive that has to come to the workplace that maybe I need to soften up in the home place, right? It's like, I don't want to treat my kids like a team member at work because there's just a different energy there. And so I'm trying to think of like, all right, when you mentioned alarms or cues or something to like kind of switch gears. And I'm not switching from like first to sixth to reverse. I'm just like, there's a subtle change between third and fourth gear, but I need to make that shift so I don't burn out the engine or burn out the family or burn out my team.
Well, then you would ask yourself if you're acting in a reactionary, or you realize that you're carrying the means of communication from one area into another in which it does not belong. Why am I acting that way? And is this really in line with another identity, or is there something that's deeper seated that I've not dealt with?
Yeah. I'm going to ponder that question. How do your coaching relationships usually start, right? Because usually people find you kind of, it's like hiding the medicine in the cheese, right? They find you because they want to lose 20 pounds or they want to, get bigger triceps for the bodybuilding competition they're joining. But then you start to work to peel back those layers. So how do clients find you, first of all? And then how do you set the table with the client of like, all right, yeah, cool. We'll do the macros and the nutritional plan, and we're going to get you super ready for that bikini contest. Oh, and by the way, what we're really going to talk about weekly is like your emotional trauma from 13-year-old junior high that like has you need, like, how do you even bridge that gap? Because for me, if I'm just coming to you to like lose 10 pounds, it's like, all right, well, that might be a little bit of a turnoff if we want to go super deep, super fast. So how are you finding your clients, and then how are you transitioning them into the work that really needs to be done?
Well, very few actually are of that belief these days. I've changed my marketing about a year ago, and the way the algorithm works, it takes about 3 months for Facebook to catch up. But I mean, yeah, most of them know I will address that, but many of them are very aware now of the fact that on Facebook and Instagram is the majority of my marketing. That's not, they're in for a ride. It's not just going to be this. If they really want to lose the weight, we're going to go a lot deeper than that. And I do consultations before. I do not accept everyone into my program. I am not going to drag someone through the weeds.
Right.
It's a disservice to them, and it's a disservice to my energy as well. So I will take people from, we always say that like the best clients and mentorees to work with are those which are kind of like within the last 3 to 4 years of where we're at as far as our own experiences and education level. And I'm not going to go 10 years ago. I'm not gonna go back and deal with someone who's been from 10 years ago, because first off, the memory and recall that I have from those experiences is not going to be as authentic to leading them through this portion of the journey. So they are truly free from that emotional and traumatic experiences. And it's just fucking exhausting. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like talking to a deaf person, right? They don't have that level of awareness. Please, no one take offense, but I'm trying to give a good analogy. You can't speak to someone who can't hear.
Right.
So if they're incapable of seeing, hey, there's something deeper seated here, we're not going to get anywhere. It's going to be, and I mean, they may lose 20 pounds. I've done it before. They may lose 50 pounds. As soon as they're done, they're done. So I literally will not accept people into my program unless they are under the awareness that we're going to be going into your past. We're going to be going into your behaviors, because it's a disservice if we don't.
And what are the things that you're listening for to decide whether or not they're tone deaf to what they need to accomplish, right? So like somebody comes to you and you're like, hey, we're going to do an exploratory call to see if you're a fit. What are some of the things they're talking about, or some phrases? Like, how are you deciphering like, oh yeah, this person is tone deaf to what the real work and the message is going to be, versus like, oh yeah, this person gets it. This is a real good candidate for you.
It's more body language actually than anything. And that's why I do video calls. Typically speaking, it's a tonality. It's a tonality and an awareness, and oh, wow. Oh my God, you're right. Things like that. And that sort of verb, or their body language is not enclosed like this and very shut off. And if they're more like open and just like pondering and thinking, and you can see the wheels turning, then there's the possibility of that. And I will give them the opportunity at the end of the call to work with me. And then sometimes I've even cut a call short at 15, 20 minutes. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you come back to me if you feel like you want to, because at this moment, I'm not going to be able to aid you in the way that you want me to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I've told people this many, many times in coaching loan officers. I'm like, hey man, you make more money from the clients you say no to than the clients you say yes to. Because the client that you have the guts to say no to is the one who's going to burn your time, is not a model match, cannot qualify, is going to leave you a 1-star review anyway, is going to tell all the realtors they know that you suck at your job. And it's like, it's just a nightmare. It's like every single time I've taken on a client where it's like we pull a rabbit out of a hat and there should be a parade in the streets that we got these people into a house. They hate us. We hate them. Their realtor hates us. It's a relationship killer. And so I love the fact that you've created a filtering mechanism to get rid of the people that are not a model match. So maybe pulling on that thread a little bit more, finding your model match clients. You are a prolific Facebook and Instagram poster, but it's not... What I appreciate about you is it's not just garbage. You're not just putting up, cut and paste or pictures of yourself or pictures of, fitness models or pictures of your clients like winning the day. Like
I make all my content.
Dude, there's some real long, deep thought posts, like real copywriting stuff where you're just like, you're banging it out. So first of all, I'm glad to hear that you do all of it yourself. I can tell that about you because I know you personally. But tell us about like your Facebook super in-depth stories and posting, and then does that lead to a survey? And then what do you do on the introductory call? Because like pulling at this thread a little bit, finding your model match as a client or a partner, like how does that all work? Because I think that's probably 90% of the battle is finding the right person. So how do you craft your Facebook posts and marketing, because it's beautiful, by the way, and then how does that lead to the next step and the next step in the video conference, and then like actually signing the contract and saying, okay, we're going to work together?
Typically speaking, most of my people I pull into the fray based off of different groups that I've added to. And if they interact with me and I feel like we have a good amount of communication, I have to go back. I have to filter my friends. I'm at 5,000 now. Right. If I feel like there's a good energy, I will add them. And then I create my content based off of my own internal work. And then my clients' work as well. So sometimes I'll go through our experiences, and because of HIPAA laws, they're protected, but I will take certain extrapolations and construct them into the long forms, the copyright that you've mentioned before. But the majority of it is just my own stream of consciousness and kind of realizations that I've come to based off of the experiences and awareness that I've had in my readings, in my education, and the people that I've worked with. And then typically speaking, people will watch my content for about 4 to 6 months. 4 to 6 weeks before maybe engaging me in Messenger. I don't really reach out anymore at all. I allow the leads to come to me. I feel how many of us had those people jumped into our inbox and they're like, hey, you want to buy? It's like, that is so cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll be like, I saw there was something going on in your profile, like someone's in distress. I'll be like, hey, are you okay? And you will be absolutely flabbergasted at how many people who I get essays from. And I'm just like, oh, never really met you before, but let's have this conversation. And sometimes, I'd say about actually 60% of the time, that leads to a call. And we sometimes end up working together and sometimes we don't. You know as well as I do, it's points of contact in the industry and how familiar is the potential client going to become with you before they actually want to work with you. And then they have the opportunity to book a call with me. And then we go from there. I have a small group program and then I have a one-on-one. But I'd have to say the best clients are the ones probably like you, in which they were like, I'm ready. I'm ready to do all the work. I'm ready to face all the pain. I'm ready to do all the trauma. And for them, their shifts come lightning fast. One of my fastest, within 10 days, one of my clients was able to dissolve dysmorphia, OCD, and she dropped like 10 pounds as well, just by changing a whole bunch of different mechanisms. Because believe it or not, when we have this stress in our body, it brings up cortisol and norepinephrine in the bloodstream, which can keep you from dropping weight and causes a whole bunch of variability within your blood sugar as well. So our somatic is so deeply tied to our psyche, and people forget that when they're trying to do these health journeys as well.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about that, like not as well versed as you. I've really been monitoring my blood sugar this year, just as really like a marker to be like, all right, I know what some of the numbers are for longevity. Blood sugar is very interesting. And it's just something I can get a little obsessive about. Like on this journey, like what can I monitor that's like really going to give me some decent returns? And so with that, I've been reading about the cortisol and this and like the stress plus the caffeine plus this is like preventing the weight loss and blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting how like when you just become comfortable with something, like things just happen, right? And in my world where I coach on this for lead generation, and I have so many testimonies about this. It's not even funny. They're like, well, Scott, I finally started making my calls and I was connecting with these 100 realtors every couple weeks, calling them, connecting with them, adding value, doing lunch and learns. And then all of a sudden I just started to get this plethora of referrals from over here from these people that I didn't even know. But it's like the universe was just rewarding me for doing the right thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little bit about it. But it's like when you're in a better state of mind, your social media marketing comes across better. And then word of mouth travels where one of these realtors you talk to another realtor who gave out your number to this person. So it's all part of the same ecosystem. It's like the best way I can describe it is when an athlete's like, oh, I was in flow. Well, what the fuck does that mean? It just means that like everything was working kind of together the way it's supposed to.
That's a state of consciousness, actually. It's more so when the mind is not a factor and you're just in a pure level of awareness, which is, if you want to get into the spiritual, a connection with the divine or God. So it's almost like divinely sourced. And that's why many of those people are able to out of nowhere. And they, even their training all lines up, their body all lines up because they are connected, if you want to get into the spiritual realm. And I also believe in that as well. Like if you show up with the right energy and the right intention, that's going to facilitate something on the back end when you decide to let go of needing to have it right now, because that scarcity also obviously influences your ability to show up fully within the business place. So it's all very closely intertwined.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I mean, we're getting into some real woo-woo stuff, but just that
esoteric.
That abundance versus scarcity. It's like I always ask, like when I'm polling an audience when we do a live event or something, I'm like, hey, how many of you can feel it? Just it like oozes out of them. You can feel it when somebody's desperate for a sale, and of course, everybody raises their hand, and I'm like. And do you think maybe your clients can feel it when you sound desperate for a sale? And they're like, no, not me. I'm like, oh, so we can recognize it in everybody else, but nobody's recognizing it in you. Like, same thing when people are trying to multitask. Everybody knows when you're on the phone with somebody and they're multitasking and they're sending an email. Like, you just feel it through the phone line. And yet loan officers, the people I coach, they do it all the time, right? Where they're trying to multitask when they're on the phone and they're not present and they're not like on the call. And I'm like, how do you think that person's feeling on the other end of the phone? So different points of the spectrum on what we're talking about, but it's like that self-awareness, getting into the right place. It's all super powerful.
We are all at our bare level energy. So if let's be totally honest, like if your energy is off, that's going to influence the sale. It's going to influence your ability to show up. So yeah, it may be woo woo, but I mean, even, I don't know if you've seen some of the most recent stuff coming out with quantum mechanics and what is reality, like what is reality? So it's like being aware of that stuff. I'm not closed off to anything. I'm especially with fucking COVID, nothing surprises me anymore. There's nothing you could throw my way that surprises me. So I'm open to anything, as long as there's a degree of a little bit of mind behind it. And also I'm very much the body, the somatic, if it feels right within my body, then I typically speaking will at least listen to what's going on.
Yeah, so talk about this interesting circle, right? Because like when I poll the audience, I do this all the time at live events. I'm like, hey, if we have this wheel of life, like scale of 1 to 7, 1 is you're failing, it's miserable, you're embarrassed to admit it, and 7 is like you're in this total state of flow. And I have people rate, their finances and their personal relationships and their charitable giving and their spirituality. The number one correlation between I'm crushing it in business and I've got the energy to do all this stuff is always physical health. Like if somebody's at a 7 in business, I can almost guarantee you they're at a 5, 6, or 7 on physical health. They're getting their workouts. So there's this weird circle where it's like, well, I've got the physical health, so I'm doing the business, but clearly I'm only focused on my physical health because my mindset is open enough to like focus on my physical self, which means that my business is going well. It's like, it's this really great self-fulfilling kind of prophecy or circle. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people are looking for, hey, what's the technique? What's the Instagram hack? What's the $99 funnel that's going to make my business succeed? And it's like, well, if you get your mind and your body right, the business will probably take care of itself.
Correct, because you're taking care of yourself first and foremost instead of putting the business before yourself. You can't, I mean, it goes back to the age-old adage, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help someone on an airplane unless you put the life mask on first. So you have to take care of yourself, because if not, I mean, things are going to start falling apart, right? And on a chemical and physiological level, your gut is affected by what you eat, which affects your neurotransmitters, which affects your hormones, which is going to affect your ability to focus in business. If your body is not moving, you're going to start aching, you're going to start hurting, which is going to affect your mood and your focus. If you don't have any sort of self-worth, if you don't believe in yourself, that's going to affect your energy in showing up and constantly have you second guessing what steps next to make, even if you're some sort of Fortune 500 CEO. So it all goes back to you, as selfish as that sounds, so you can actually show up for others and in business, because then you can show them by action, by intention, that this is the way. This is how we are able to reach our fullest potential. So it all starts within, all of it.
It's funny you mentioned that. I think I brought this up on a previous podcast. Usually when my wife and I travel with the kids, three seats to a row, my wife sits with the kids and then I sit in the row behind them, usually so I can listen to a podcast or something and she can take care of the kids. And then if they're getting out of line, I can reach over the seat and like slap them. And then they know like hand of God, aka dad, is coming down. They better behave. So we ended up on a flight where it was a short flight, and Gabriel was like, Dad, I really want to sit with you and talk to you. So Alina sat with Gabriel, Alina sat with Karina, and I sat with Gabriel. And I'd never experienced this before, when the airline stewardess walked up and down the aisle, they came to me and they're like, hey, in an event of emergency, put your mask on first and then your kids. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. And then she's like, no, you got to put your mask on first and then the kids. I'm like, yeah, no, I know, I've seen the movies. And she's like, okay, just so you know, like you put your mask on first and then and I'm like, what? I'm not stupid, lady. Like, leave me the fuck alone. Yeah. But what I realized, because I asked an airline employee that I know, I was like, hey, what was the story with this lady telling me like 4 times? Did I just have dummy written across my head? And they're like, no, they're like, in an event of emergency, of course you're always going to go to save your kid first. That's the exact opposite thing you should do. Like, if you can't save yourself and take care of yourself first, then how can you possibly, save your kid? And I'm like, man, what a like, euphemism for life, right? Like if I'm not living a healthy life and doing jujitsu, what chance is there that my kids are going to stick with it, right? Or if I'm eating a package of Oreos every night, what are the chances my kids are going to have healthy eating habits when they get older? Like that idea of like put your own life mask on, air mask on first, and then the kids. I mean, that was like an antidote for all of life. And I'm like, oh,
for all
man.
of life, it really is. And many times you'll see people who consistently still push I need to help others first. And just as a side note, those who do that, typically speaking, have zero self-worth, or they get their self-worth from the validation of others, in which case we have to address that. Otherwise, it's going to be cyclic behavior of, this pedantic back and forth. I need to fulfill this for others. So the question is, why don't you have self-worth? Why do you believe that you are at the bottom of that totem pole? And where did that come from? But if you don't take care of you, you also can't authentically lead, right? You can't lead a place that you've never been.
Right. Right.
It's like you telling me, it's like you not having ever generated a lead in your life and you telling me who the fuck are you?
Right.
It's like when we go and we see the fat trainer at the gym and we're like, I don't want to train with him.
Dude, when I see a fat cop, I have no respect for him. I'm like, if I can outrun you, because I'm made for distance, not for speed. Like I can put on 100 pounds and walk for 100 miles.
And walk for 100 miles, yeah.
But I cannot run fast. So if there's a cop who I can outrun, I'm sorry, I just have zero respect for you as like a human being or as a law enforcement officer. And maybe that's totally unfair, but that's just how I feel. Like there should be no cop on planet Earth that I can outrun. Period.
Hand him my business card, sir. Whenever you're ready to talk.
Exactly. You need to talk to Miss Ziegler because she could really help with your self-worth issues. If somebody's listening to this and they're whatever, they don't feel healthy or they are overweight and they're like, oh, these guys are just shitting on me. I know you really come from a place of service. Like I know you well enough that you've, to the detriment of your own success, you've you just live your life in a place of service, which of course comes from leading yourself first. And that's why you are always on the jiu-jitsu mat, which I don't even understand how you do that much without getting injured. But anyway, that's a different conversation. When you take care of yourself first and then you're in that act of service, like a lot of what we're saying in the last half hour can come across as judgmental or off-putting, or, we're just talking shit about people that are having a hard time controlling their weight. But when you start to talk to people, I guess the question I'm asking is like, do they know they have a problem and they're hiding behind the societal norm of like, oh, we can't fat shame? Or do they not know they have a problem yet? Or is there work to do there? It
depends on, it's very case by case. So sometimes they'll be like, oh, I know I have a problem, but they don't want to talk about it. So then what I'll do is I will expand upon it. I'll be like, so is there stress going on in your life? Is there something that happened over the last couple of years that might have been possibly traumatic if we're having a conversation? And when we open into that, many times we don't even have to touch on the food and we deal with that. And as a byproduct, the food and the weight ends up being dissolved. I've had people with me changing nothing in their food drop 20 pounds in 8 weeks.
Shut up. Not possible.
No, I don't change anything. They do it of their own volition. I just say, hey, ate this, this, and this, didn't give them a meal plan, dealt with the trauma. And they just, as a byproduct of dealing with those experiences, were no longer having to self-soothe and self-medicate. They were moving because they wanted to. And that is the goal in my programming, and is that the people want to do the things that they say they've always wanted to do, but they no longer have this emotional experiential baggage that is keeping them rigidly stuck where they're at because they're fucking exhausted, or because they don't believe they're worth it, because they don't love themselves, whatever the internal dialogue is. And not everyone comes to me for self-hate. Some of them just come to expansion of like where they're at. They're like, I'm here, I want to go there. I've had some business professionals as well who are like stuck in a rut and they want to get better. I've had people I had one woman sign up with me because she literally just wanted to get up at fucking 6 a.m. and she couldn't get up at 6 a.m. So it depends on what the individual feels is their poison, or what they feel is keeping them from expanding into all their potential, basically.
Yeah. So, that brings up a really good point, and I could use a million examples. Scott saying that I know one of the steps on the path to getting healthier is not drinking Dr. Pepper. And once in a while, I just love to guzzle a 40-ounce Dr. Pepper because I I say that I like the taste. Or my wife wants to wake up at 6 a.m. to have everything like ready to go by the time the kids wake up at 6:45 or 7. And of course she hits the snooze button until 7:50. Everybody has that thing that they say they want to do, or the person that they want to become, or the healthier habit they want to do, or they want to get back into hiking, or they want to stop doing that. There's something that they want to stop doing or start doing. And no matter how many times that person, myself included, says that to themselves, they don't do it. They're living out of alignment with the stuff that they say they want to do. So my question for you would be, when you run into this stuff, do you find most people are living out of alignment with what they say they want to do versus what they're going to do because they don't really mean what they say, or they really have some type of environmental issue or trauma or trigger or something that keeps them from doing the thing that they want to say? Is it that they're full of shit and like, I should just accept the fact that I'm going to drink Dr. Pepper and that can be my one vice and I should just shut the fuck up and stop talking about it? Or
just enjoy the Dr. Pepper.
Or is it like, hey man, there's something really deep seated here that has you using that comfort food, and like that's what we need to address? Like I never know whether people are full of shit when they say that they want to do the lead generation and they don't, and they're just truly full of shit and they're kidding themselves, or if I'm missing some coaching opportunity to like turn this dial, adjust this widget, and then you will do the thing that you say you're going to do and you'll be more in alignment.
There's a couple ways that can go. Number one, many people don't know what the level of commitment or perceived commitment is associated with the thing they say they want to change. Ooh. Number two, is the thing they say they want to change something they really want to change, or is it something else, someone else's thing that they say that they want to change and they think that it's what they want to change, but it has nothing to do with the feeling, emotion, accolade, experience that they actually want to be in, and they think that that thing will elicit that response. Does that make sense?
Kind of. So like, I'll use my wife as an example because it's fun to pick on my wife because she never listens to the podcast. So she knows in her heart of hearts, if she gets up a little bit earlier, then the morning experience with our kid goes better, right? Because it's like, if she's jumping out of bed at 7:15 the same time as the kids, and then they're trying to get meals ready and they're trying to do all this stuff, there's a level of stress that gets transferred from her to the kids, and then fights start, and then, out the door. It's like every parent has this. Every parent has dealt with this at some level. You're fighting with the kids to get them into the car to get to school, right? She knows in her heart of hearts, she's accepted. She said out loud, like, dude, if I would just wake up at 6:15, make their lunch before they wake up, kind of start my day, get my makeup on, I feel better about herself. Like, she knows that to be true. And yet in the moment, she's like, fuck it, dude, I want to sleep in. I want to hit the snooze button. And this could be me with the Dr. Pepper. This could be, you with making it to the jiu-jitsu tournament. This could be Chris with wanting to go more hiking or whatever. But when the train crosses, or when it's time to cross that bridge, you're just like, yeah, I'm just not going to do it. And so is it because you're not going to do it because you're just trying to live up to what society or your husband or your friend or your boss tells you you're supposed to do? Or is it like, I just can't bring myself to do the thing because I'm inhibited by this trauma and this like emotional baggage? It's just,
exhaustion. In the morning stuff. Yeah, in the morning it could be something like, especially for a mother, it's like, it's the cost versus reward. It's like, oh, well, I'm already familiar with the chaos of this. I'm not so sure I'm willing to deal with the chaos of perceived exhaustion, plus the potential benefit of this. And I don't really know how much benefit is going to be associated with it. So we are very habitual creatures, obviously, right? We create habits to shorten the loop from A to B to C. Obviously, some of those A to B, C scenarios are not as advantageous as others, but they become the norm. And even if they are uncomfortable, it's the fear and the pain of the potential new uncomfortable and what that could look like that keeps people terrified and rigidly affixed to where they're at. And for people like that, I'm going to preach what I always preach, which is run towards the fucking pain and fear. Because what happens when we do that, we show our brain, we show our central nervous system that it is not going to kill us. Because our brain typically throws up alarm bells to perceived threat. And the only way that we can show that something is not a threat is by confronting it.
Right. Is this going back to like our lizard brain, hiding from the saber-toothed tiger, where it's like, if I know that this watering hole is safe, even if that water feels a little tainted, it's like, oh, that watering hole over there, the perceived like unknown might have saber-toothed tigers that are going to eat our ass. Like, so is there just, this hesitancy towards change or the unknown. This has got to come from like our lizard brain from a million years ago, 50,000 years ago, whenever we walked the planet, is like with the saber-toothed tigers. Yep. Ironically, I don't even know. Chris, you're going to have to look this up. How long ago did saber-toothed tigers walk the earth? You could tell me 50,000 years. You could tell me a million years, and I would have no clue. So this is one of my areas of ignorance. So we're going to look up how long ago saber-toothed tigers walked the earth.
How archaic is this?
10,000 years ago.
8,000 to 10,000 years ago? That is not that long ago. That's not that long. That's like 170 grandparents ago or something like that. So anyway, so it's this perceived. It's the fear of change. It's the fear of unknown where you're like, I'm more comfortable with the discomfort I know versus the discomfort that could be out there.
That I do not know. Exactly. And that is what keeps people so rigidly affixed is, hey, I know this is uncomfortable. I know I'm unhappy, but it's like the dead end job, right? It's like, hey, I know this is a horrible fucking job, but it puts food on the table. So I'm going to stick in it anyway, instead of facing the potential of losing that job and trying something that you don't really know how it's going to pan out. So it's like, and I deal with shit like that all the time too. It's like, well, it's your life. Do you want to be on your deathbed? Like, hey, I worked that 9 to 5 and I really paid the bills, or did I try a few different things to see if I could actually find something that gave me fulfillment? Yeah. And the only way to actually deal with fear is to face it. So if I see a trigger, I've had so many triggers. I was diagnosed with general anxiety and social anxiety disorder. I was medicated for 8 years. Nothing for 2.5 years. No meds, no nothing. I run towards my triggers because guess what? That means there is work to be done in that area. And anyone can dissolve their triggers, but it takes going towards it. Exposure therapy at its bare nature. And I do that through different mediums. We can do it directly. I have other sort of modalities I integrate, but exposure therapy by and by is going to be your most efficacious tool in this area.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I know from personal conversations you and I have had, so I hope you don't mind sharing, but I know you're an open book and you're very vulnerable. Oh, yeah. You're very vulnerable. You told me about this shift when you went from like, hey, the hourly employee plus guaranteed training sessions working for Gold's Gym or wherever you worked to like, oh, I'm going to go fully self-employed. And obviously COVID helped with that a little bit, but you had like a record breaking financial year last year because you just leaned into that. You ran towards the fear. COVID kind of helped push you out the door because all the gyms got closed anyway. But like, it's really worked for you. And I got to imagine like 2021 was a better year for you than 2020. 2022 was a better year, and 2023 is going to be even better. So like, you're just to the point of leading by example. You're like a living example of, hey, run towards the fear, get out of the uncomfortable comfort, and better things are on the other side. I love that about you.
Thank you. No, and last year I had 3 times I nearly died. I flipped across the freeway 3 times in Austin, Texas. I still remember like I'm falling, like I was like, you can't control anything. When you land, you might never be able to walk again. And as I'm sitting there and my arm's bleeding out and I can't move my left leg, I'm like, well, just submit to the experience because you can't do a damn thing right now. And for me, as total control freak, it was just.
And by the way, after you, funny story, after she flipped that car 3 times and like a chunk of her arm was missing from the road rash. I hope they found that driver, by the way, who hit you. Did they ever find the person that hit you and ran you off the road and flipped you 3 times? Yeah, fuck that guy. I remember you came to jiu-jitsu like 3 days later with a chunk out of your arm, and Jeff and I were looking at you and you're like, hey, you could take a week off, man. Like you're like, I'm good. Just some Neosporin. I wrapped it. We'll be fine. Right. I was like, you have a chunk of flesh missing from your arm, buddy. And
then I got bit by a rattlesnake a month later too. And that's when Jeff said, hey, you're sitting on the sideline.
You're gonna take a couple of days off. So hey, we've had you on the show before, so I've asked this question, so I'm gonna ask a different question this time. Just a couple rapid fire questions. One, from all your long form Facebook posts, when are you gonna have somebody like correlate all of those and turn that into a book?
You give me a person who can help me with that, and I'm 100% down, because you're not the first person who's asked me that. I would love to do a little like ebook, $5, whatever, because a lot of people love, like, you're not the only one who said that, love those posts. So yeah, if someone's able to help me with that process, I would be more than happy to compile them.
It's good stuff. Hey, can you send me an email, Chris, to I'll introduce you to Kat, QAT. She's a ghostwriter. She loves doing stuff like that. So, for some nominal fee, she could turn all of your work into a book. So I'll introduce you to her because I think you should have a book with a bunch. I read almost all of your posts and they're very good.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Number two, we're filming this in January of 2023. It'll probably come out February 2023 because we're a little bit ahead on the schedule. But what are you most excited about going into 2023? Like what, now that you're working totally remote and you're completely mobile, like what's on your radar? Like what are you looking forward to in 2023?
Well, this year my goal is to, within the business, service 3 times the amount of clients that I did last year. On a broader scale, I'm going to be launching the lowest cost offering that I ever have. My program started around 3,000 for small group. They go up to 7,500, which are full. Like I fly them out here. They come and spend 3 days with me. I took my last client to a rave, her first rave. She had a fucking blast. It was amazing. All expenses paid. And then I'm going to be offering $100 a month thing in March where I will have 1 or 2 lives a month within a private group. There will be an open forum communication. So a lot of people can start to have movement on their own without having as much one-on-one, and they can get a taste of what it's like to work with me because I am not for everyone.
Right.
So I'm very in your face, as you know, but I'm very compassionate as well because I've been a lot of the places that many people have, and everyone's journey is their own, and I honor and respect that. So I'm excited about that. And then, might go to New Zealand. I might go to Thailand because Jeff decided he wants us to go, and I've been wanting to do this forever, go and do Thai fights with the Thais for like 10 days, probably
that's awesome.
June or July, right? I'm sure he will reach out to you to see if you want to come. And then my first amateur MMA fight, I'm going to be doing that probably in May. I registered on Camo for that, and maybe buy another house, possibly.
Awesome.
With my favorite mortgage lender.
Perfect.
So.
Yes. By the way, this podcast brought to you by the fact that we're still making money in mortgages, even though rates are up a lot. So if you need a mortgage or mortgage coaching, get in touch with Scott Groves at Scott Groves Team. Shameless plug for us because that's the only way this podcast still exists and I can afford to pay Chris. And then, by the way, if there's any way for you to work it, you should come to the Jocko Jiu-Jitsu Immersion Camp. It's so good. That? It's in August. Just look up Origin, which is the company Jocko owns that does all the rash guards and stuff. And it's 8 days at like this picturesque summer camp in Maine. It's absolutely gorgeous. You stay in cabins. Oh, wow. It's like Boy Scout or Girl Scout camp, but with cigars and with jiu-jitsu. And so Sunday through Sunday, they have like 3 jiu-jitsu sessions a day. The mats are always open. They have like 20 world-class instructors. I know your coaching schedule is really full, but if you could take a full week off and just be present with jiu-jitsu, that Origin camp is like the best $2,400 I've ever spent. Yeah, I already paid for it. Then
I'll go.
It's going to be awesome.
Did I tell you how Jocko's daughter submitted me at the last tournament?
No.
Jocko's daughter submitted me at my last at One World Jiu-Jitsu. So I broke my nose in Naga in September, 2 minutes into my first round. And I fought 6 fights after that. I won 4 out of 6. And then I had a fight at World Jiu-Jitsu League 2 weeks later. And no, you know me, I just showed up. So I was like, I'm probably going to not win, but I had number 1. I was the number 1 in blue belt at the time, and I didn't want to lose that. So I fought. I lost against the first girl, and then the second girl, Jocko's daughter, walks on, and I was like, fuck.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was good for a while, and she kept going armbar, triangle, defending. And then she hit my nose in one of the transitions, and eyes started going. And as I was doing that, she grabbed my arm and yanked it. And I'm now a highlight reel on World Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, that sucks. It always sucks to make the highlight reel losing. So
yes,
it is what it is. And then last question. Last time I asked you what your favorite movie is, you answered that. So I'm going to ask you, I know you don't take a lot of time off. I know you don't do a lot of stuff, but once in a while when you need to unwind, what's your favorite TV show and why?
Okay, I'll say one of my old favorite ones. Grace and Frankie. It's just fucking hilarious. Have you ever seen it?
No, not even on my radar.
Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin.
Oh, old lady roommates, or do they become lesbians?
So what happens is they're 2 married couples. And in the first episode, they married couples, lawyer, business partners for like 20, 30 years. and they meet at a dinner, and Jane Fonda really doesn't like Lily Tomlin. They kind of like associate with each other because their husbands are business partners and best friends. They break up at this dinner, and they end up breaking up and divorcing their wives for each other. So these women end up only having the beach house left, and they go to the beach house and they're fighting it out on the beach house. They end up becoming best friends. It's the most hilarious thing ever because they're such polar opposites.
I love it. I love it. Where do people get in touch with you? I mean, obviously, Facebook and Instagram, we'll put all those tags in the comments and the show notes and stuff, but what's the easiest way for people to connect with you?
Facebook and then I also have my email on my Facebook as well. They can just shoot me a message in private messenger. I'm pretty good about turnaround. And then I'll give you my email as well. And I'm working on redoing a website, which I can give you guys when I get it done.
Perfect, man. Send us all of that. We'll make sure we put in the show notes. And thanks for always for being available and being on. And I'll see you when I'm back in LA in a couple weeks at the gym.
Oh, sweet.